Tea Party caucus member Senator Mike Lee joins us. Nice to see you, Senator.
Good to see you.
Tell me, sir, what happened today with the rally? How many people showed up, and essentially what was their beef? What was the problem?
You know, I think we had about 50 members of Congress between the House and the Senate when we showed up to express our outrage at what happened and our concern with the fact that we've got a government that is now so big, so powerful, so expensive, and so vast that it can't adequately be supervised. And as a result, the American people are paying for it, not just in terms of their money, but also in terms of their liberty and their privacy. And that's not okay.
Now, you've written an article. You said it's not about character or confidence or competence, rather. It is about the big government itself. That's where you lay all the blame for all this, in big government, right?
Yeah, that's right. This isn't about one particular person. It's not necessarily even just about one particular party, although one party is in control of government right now and is certainly to blame for what happened here. But this is bigger than that. When our federal government gets to be something that spends $4 trillion a year, it's unmanageable. This is one of the few moments where I find myself agreeing with something David Axelrod has said. He said yesterday that the federal government's just too vast for any one person, including the President of the United States, to be able to control. That means it's time to ramp it down. That means it's time to simplify. That means that what we have is too dangerous to be trusted.
What do you make of this IRS scandal on the targeting of the Tea Party? I mean, why do you think it happened? Do you think it's just a couple of rogue people at the bottom, or do you think it's part of the culture, part of the big government, or even something more sinister?
I certainly don't think it's just a couple of rogue people at the bottom. It's no coincidence, Greta, that what sparked a lot of this was Obamacare. A few years ago, some groups started putting themselves together as a result of the fact that they were afraid about the fact that the federal government was about to get a lot bigger and a lot more expensive as a result of Obamacare. They started speaking their minds. And all of a sudden, the ruling class in Washington got scared, and it started retaliating before this movement could gain too much momentum. And that's why this happened. And it's no coincidence, Greta, that the IRS, which is about to become a lot more powerful as a result of Obamacare, was threatened by these groups that were trying to undermine Obamacare.
What I always think is so interesting about this is that I hear some people, because I live here in Washington and I get out a bit, is that some people who don't like the Tea Party groups think that there's something, you know, that they're so different than they are. Most of them have never been involved in politics before. It's an economic issue with them, and they suddenly want to get in politics together, and they almost come to this rather innocently, not knowing how down and dirty politics can be. I mean, that's been my experience. We had a man on the other night. He's a former commercial airline pilot. First time he's ever been involved in politics, and now he's under scrutiny by the IRS.
Yeah, that's right. Look, these are people, just hardworking men and women who come from diverse backgrounds, many of whom have never been involved in politics a single day in their lives. And they're concerned about the government. They have one concern in common, which is that the federal government has gotten too big and too expensive. They want to do something about it. And all of a sudden, they find themselves the targets of government retaliation of the nastiest sort. This really ought to scare all of us. You know, regardless of your political background, regardless of your particular ideology, this ought to bother you, because today it's retaliation against a government critic on the right. Tomorrow it could be against a government critic on the left. We're not safe until we restrict the power of government to do this sort of thing.
What do you think is going to happen with Obamacare and the fact that so much of it is going to be it's run by HHS and the IRS pretty much? I mean, most of it is managed by that. What do you foresee is happening now that the IRS is under such incredible scrutiny, and a lot of people now are getting quite worried that the IRS is going to be in their medical problems and don't even want IRS anywhere near them?
This certainly hasn't been a good week for the President of the United States or for Obamacare. I think you're going to continue to see a lot more pieces of legislation put forward to try to undermine Obamacare, to try to weaken it. We heard from Congressman Price just a few minutes ago about a bill that he's introduced. I'm talking all I can about a piece of legislation I've introduced in the Senate, Senate Bill 560, which is very simple. It's one page. It simply says that the individual mandate provision in Obamacare shall not be construed as imposing a tax or as a valid exercise of Congress's power to tax. And if this were to pass, it would completely undo what the Supreme Court tried to do last summer, which was rewrite Obamacare, not just once, but twice, in order to save it. And I think you'll see more laws like this being proposed, and I think you'll continue to see a lot more people calling for the demise of Obamacare in one form or another.
Here's my prediction. I think you guys can pass as many bills as you want in the House and Republicans till you're blue in the face, and in the Senate you can try to do whatever you want till you're blue in the face. But I think that the biggest problem that Obamacare has is the fact that it needs to get funded, and that's something that they've got to get funds out of Congress. They're not going to get that. They're not going to get those extra IRS agents. They're not going to get what they need to implement. I think that's where the Obamacare is going to have. Not all the bills you guys pass to repeal it, because both houses aren't on line with it, and the president's not going to sign that. You disagree with me?
Well, you may be right, but this is part of what helps us communicate this message. This is part of what helps us build the public support to do what you're describing. And then predictably, some of this might be met with some of what we've already seen from the Department of Health and Human Services, where Congress refuses to appropriate certain funds that they want in order to, let's say, advertise Obamacare or in order to publicize it. And so what do? Well, they go out and they try to raise funds by effectively extorting money from companies within the industry that they regulate. I mean,
but that's another whole problem. That's another whole problem. And Senator Lamar Alexander's all over that one. He's concerned about that one. I got to go, but that is an interesting issue, and we'll bring you back to talk about it as it percolates through the system. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Greta.